Hello. Wind Waker is a game that I don't think really needs an introduction. It's one of the best games in one of the best video game franchises, probably of all time, and there's like 3 million YouTube videos that you could find online talking about any aspect of this game that you could think of, but even though there's not a lot that needs to be said about this game that hasn't been said about it, I'm going to take a little stab at saying something maybe unique and a little personal to me. You see, I was like 6 when I first played this game. I got a Gamecube for Christmas along with this game, and no memory card. So I was forced to play the opening of this game over and over and over again. And I think this does something to the psyche of a small child. You see, when I was playing these opening areas, something was happening in my brain. I started feeling so comfortable with them that they were almost like a second home to me, if that makes sense. And even all these years later, I still feel this way about areas in the beginning of the game. They make me feel comfortable and maybe even a little cozy, perhaps. There's also areas in this game that, playing it as a kid, made me feel pretty bad, to say the least. They made me feel uncomfortable. They're like kind of gross and icky. And, you know, in this episode of Atmosphere, we're going to try to explore those areas, see what we can find out about these disgusting areas of Wind Waker, and also the areas that make me feel good. And, you know, hopefully I can give you a little peek into my own nostalgia for this game. First up is Outset Island. This is the place that you start the game in, and like I mentioned, with no memory card, this is where I spent a lot of time playing the game as a kid. It's a cute and quaint little fishing island. There's a bunch of citizens here, and the first stop on your journey is Grandma's house. You don't really spend a whole bunch of time here in the game, unfortunately, but I do love the little kitchen slash dining slash sleeping area thing that they've got going on here. The window in the back actually has clouds moving in the background, which I always thought was super cute. It was like the area outside the window was alive. Just outside the window is this nice little beachfront area with these canoes that you don't actually see anybody ever use, but I always thought that was super cute, and the ocean is obviously super cool and vast in this game. Going back inside though, there's these cups on the table that my friends and I always thought it was the funniest thing to kick them off the counter and break them, which made a really funny noise. And then right next to the counter with the breakable glass is this nice little fire-sitting cooking area. I mean, look at this. It looks so nice here. There's pictures of Link and Errol and this, I guess, flowers on this dresser over here. You can see the heat waves coming off of the soup pot. There's those bottles at the top of the mantle. I mean, what could be in those, man? It could be spices. Anything could be in there. Alcohol, maybe. I love this area. I love it a lot. Just up the hill from Grandma's house is a place that I affectionately refer to as the Pig House. Here we can perform just a little bit of B&E, jumping up onto the fence, onto the awning, and then onto their roof. There's a hatch in their roof that you can drop down into their attic from. There's not a whole lot going on in their attic, just some storage crates and some barrels. Probably storing food of some kind, I would imagine. But I do like that you can see back out of the hatch and see the sky and the clouds, similarly to Grandma's house. A lot of interiors in this game do that, and I love that touch in the interiors here. You can also drop down from their attic into the house itself. They also have a cooking and kitchen area in here, but they also have these massive knives. Who knows what those are for, right? I mean, they're bigger than the Master Sword, so I can't imagine they're up to anything good here. But that's it for Outset. There's plenty of more places to visit. We will be returning here, but for now, it's on to Dragon Roost. Dragon Roost is a classic Wind Waker area. People love this area. It's probably one of the most recognizable places in this game besides Windfall and Outset. I mean, just listen to this music, man. It's a jam. The first place that I want to show you guys at Dragon Roost Island is Kamali's room. Now, you have to come in here for like maybe 10 seconds in the main game, and dude, nobody hangs out in Kamali's room. Not only is Kamali a huge asshole, but after you deliver him his letter, you never have to come back here ever again. And I would bet that if I showed you guys a screenshot of this room and told you it was from Wind Waker, you'd either call me a liar or you wouldn't know where it is. But it looks so comfortable in here, right? Like, Kamali's got this super plush bed that he's hanging out on, pondering his orb. He's got this awning with these, like, feather things hanging down from the side. It just makes it look so warm and cozy in here. In the corner over here, he's got these stuffed ducks, I think, and his laundry that's folded really nice. It's super nice in here. It's super chill. I like it a lot. Upstairs at Dragon Roost is the mail sorting counter. This place is pretty unremarkable for the most part. I do like the guy sorting all of the mail. It makes it seem like this place is super busy. A lot of people probably recognize this place. It's home to a mini game that's fairly fun and is required as part of a side quest to get a piece of heart. But the one thing that I want to point out is this map on the back wall here. The cool thing that I noticed as a kid about this map is that obviously this is a map of the overworld in Wind Waker, but there's these symbols on them that correspond to the various locations in Wind Waker, and these symbols also correspond to the cubbies that you throw the mail into as part of the minigame. So comparing the map to the symbols on the cubbies, we can see that the pink one is Dragon Roost, the light green one is Forest Haven, yellow is Windfall, the dark blue mouth-looking thing is Forsaken Fortress, the dark green is Tingle's Isle, and the light blue pot is Greatfish Isle. Now, there's also some weird stuff with this map though. Namely, Outset Island has its own symbol, but it doesn't have any mail cubby associated to it, so I guess they just skipped that on the mail delivery route. And then the big odd thing with this map is that the Tower of the Gods is here, which is super bizarre because we obviously raise it out of the ocean as part of the main quest in this game, so how the Rito know about this and Link doesn't is anybody's guess. Now, obviously this doesn't mean anything, it's just a cool little thing that I noticed that adds a little bit of world building to this game, and it makes you feel like you're actually sorting letters that the postmen are actually going and sending to these places. It also kind of implies that Greatfish Isle exists and is getting mail delivered to it at this point in the game, even though we know that later in the game it's completely destroyed and nobody should be going there. Up next, we're going to take a look at the second dungeon in the game, the Forbidden Woods. Now, I mentioned earlier in this video that I never had a memory card the original time that I played this game as a kid, and the Forbidden Woods generally marked the farthest point that I would get before I would have to shut down my Gamecube and inevitably lose all of that progress and start back at the beginning. But, you know, for kid me, maybe that was for the best, because this place was really creepy. It still kind of makes me feel uncomfortable to this day. Just to start, let's take a listen to the soundtrack. When you couple that soundtrack with the creepy blue lighting that's everywhere in this dungeon and the disgusting writhing tentacles, both the ones that hurt you and the ones that you're expected to jump on as platforms, it just created this vibe, this creepy, weird vibe that I never really liked, and still to this day, I don't really like it that much. Later on in the dungeon, you'll drop this giant flower in the main room through the floor to create a hole that you can drop down, and down here, things get even weirder. It seems to be that you're like beneath the seabed in this first room that you go into, because on the wall there's these creepy fossilized fish and shells and things. But even more than that, there's these disgusting blue, writhing, grabby tentacles down here that if they latch onto you will drain your magic. But if you cut them, they bleed green blood and also regenerate. They've always given me the creeps. I don't like them. The worst thing about the Forbidden Woods though is easily the mini-boss room. So the mini-boss in this dungeon is a dude named Mothula. I like moths, they're not that creepy, but this one can spit its babies at you, and it can also rocket boost, and it's like 10 feet tall. It's pretty gross to look at, and the worst thing about it is, after you defeat him, if you look up, you'll notice that the ceiling is just gone. There is no ceiling, and I don't like knowing that. I don't like knowing that out there in the world is a giant 10-foot moth that just has free reign to the rest of the ocean. It can fly wherever it wants, go wherever it wants, and terrorize anybody that it wants. In fact, there's quite a few rooms in the Forbidden Woods that are open to the outside air, which is a fact that I don't really like to know because there's a lot of disgusting things in here, and I don't like knowing that they just have free reign and can escape whenever they want. Now that we've left the nightmare that is the Forbidden Woods, we're going to take a look at this game's hub area, Outset Island, and our first stop here is the Potion Shop. Outset Island, of course, has a ton of really nice places and areas that you can visit, but I feel like the potion shop is one that's particularly underrated. It's got this really nice pink mist effect on the ceiling, like the shopkeeper just never opens a window in here and he's just slowly asphyxiating himself with the fumes from his potions. And behind the counter, you can see his potion making setup back there. It's kind of crazy, there's smoke coming out of a whole bunch of different places, but I'm really into those bottles with the skull toppers on them. They kind of look like if you poured them, the liquid would come out of the eyes, and I think that's really neat. Behind the shopkeeper is that wall of drawers, which I can only imagine is where he keeps all of his potion making ingredients. They're all neatly organized and labeled, but the drawers themselves are kind of disheveled, and I like that look a lot. The shopkeeper himself kind of looks like a cross between a rat and Nosferatu, which I can really get behind. I like this guy's character design a lot, and I wish we interacted with him more in the main game. Moving on to probably my favorite area on Outset Island, and maybe in the whole game, is the cafe. On the walls of the cafe are some pretty interesting signs and posters and things as well. All of these signs and posters are written in the Hylian alphabet, which can be translated using an actual alphabet system that the developers made. Of course, on your original playthrough of Wind Waker, you'll probably notice that there's plenty of NPCs that talk to you in this language, and those dialogue boxes can too be translated, even before you get to New Game Plus, where they are translated for you. The difference between the dialogue boxes and these posters and signs that you can find throughout the game world is that the dialogue boxes will always be able to be translated one-to-one to the language in the localization version that you're playing. The posters and signs will always translate directly to Japanese first. And if we do just that to these posters and signs in the cafe, there's some pretty interesting world-building, hidden dialogue that we can find. Starting first with this postman flyer, if we translate it first to Japanese and then to English, it will read, "Assorting packages and the like. Job fees are negotiable." This is almost definitely a reference to the mail sorting minigame in Dragon Roost that I talked about before. Next, in the corner of the cafe, is this chalkboard menu sign. When we translate this, we can see that it's just a list of drinks and their corresponding prices. Going from the top down, we've got Lon Lon Milk for $150, Deku Nut Cake for $300, and Zora Coffee for $250. And the last translation that I want to talk about in this cafe are these jars on the shelf behind the bartender. Now, I'm playing and recording all of this on the original Gamecube version of the game, but it wasn't until the HD remake on the Wii U that these textures were actually high-res enough for us to read and translate what these jars are saying. When looking at that texture and translating it, these jars say Terra Beans. It is for those who like bitter things, which I think is pretty cute and kind of interesting. I don't really know what a Terra Bean is. I don't know if that's referenced anywhere else in the Zelda series, but I like the idea of them. The cafe at night is a completely different vibe than it is during the day, though. Some of the citizens that you've seen wandering around Windfall during the day have come into the cafe to unwind from the hustle and bustle of city life. I like to imagine that these people are sharing gossip or telling each other boating and fishing tales over drinks, especially the people sitting at this table over here. But there is one person here that I find more interesting than the others, and he's the one standing over by the bar, just over here. This guy's name is Sam, and keen-eyed observers might realize that everybody at this bar is a citizen of Windfall. I have to assume that Sam is also a citizen of Windfall, but you actually can't find him here during the day. Instead, you'll find him over here running the boating course, which I have to imagine is just his day job. But the crazy thing is the commute that he has to take to get between Windfall and the cafe every night and the boating course every morning. Taking a look at the map, we can see that Windfall is in the northern middle of the game world, and the boating course is all the way down here in the south, meaning that Sam has to take this really long commute every single night just to get back to the cafe and hang out with the boys. But I really respect that dedication, especially since the boating course is extremely easy and you basically just fleece him every single time you play it. But as long as it makes him happy, I guess it doesn't really matter that much. I will just keep taking his money. Keep on chasing your bliss, Sam. I mentioned earlier that Windfall Island is sort of the hub of Wind Waker, which is true. You do leave and revisit this island many times. But on one particular visit, there's a never-ending storm that's plaguing the game world, and you need to come back here to take your first step into figuring out why. Amongst other things, you'll need to enter the bomb shop. After the pirates leave, you're free to explore the bomb shop as is, which is significant because this is the only time in the entire game where you can explore it in this state. After the storm is over, it goes back to the way it was. This also means that this is the only time that you get to see the bomb shop owner tied up. Theoretically, I guess you could never fix the storm and just keep him like this forever, which that would be pretty interesting, I think. But more importantly, if you look at his counter, you can see that it's actually open, and you can actually go behind his counter for the first time and see what's back there. It's kind of strange There's barrels and boxes back here, which I'm assuming are full of gunpowder, but there's also these weird pipe doohickeys that I can only imagine are contraptions for building bombs. They're covered in pipes and valves, and I don't really know how they work, or really want to know how they work. But the weirdest thing in his store is something that you can always see from either side of the counter, and it's this bizarre device. I think it's some kind of camera with a stick of dynamite attached to it. I can't imagine this Joker gizmo is used for anything good, so it really makes you wonder what kind of domestic terrorism the bomb shop owner is getting up to. Moving on though, another area that you only have access to during this specific time in the game is Tetra's bedroom. There's really not anything in here or any reason to be in here, so I don't believe that many people take the time to explore it, but there's actually a bunch of interesting little things in here. She's got a nice little desk and a dresser over here with a bunch of jewelry and perfumes on it. And above this couch is an image of some kind of relative, maybe her mom. This person's never mentioned in the game, and this is the only time that you get to see her. But the most interesting thing in her room is yet another map. For those of us who've played this game, we know that the Triangle Islands are where we put the pearls to raise the Tower of the Gods out of the ocean, and those are represented by the innermost triangle of the Triforce on Tetra's map. But the outermost triangle of the Triforce seems to be pointing to the locations where you actually find the 3 pearls in the main game. Those 3 locations being Dragon Roost Island, Forest Haven, and Great Fish Isle. Before you tell me that you don't actually get the 3rd pearl at Great Fish Isle, I know, but this was Jabu Jabu's original home before Ganon destroyed it and started the Neverending Storm, which forced him to move to Outset, where you eventually do get the pearl. Speaking of Outset, I mentioned that we would come back here earlier in the video, and this is the small part that I wanted to show you guys. This is Orca's house. You can come here whenever you want at any point in the game, but during the storm, it feels especially comfortable. As a kid, I spent a lot of time in Orca's house for some reason, either hanging out on this little patio area next to this futon or up on his loft. And like I mentioned, during the storm, it's even more comfortable in here. Personally, I love stormy days in real life, so I'm just going to let you guys look out the window over the ocean and listen to the rain for a little bit. The next place I want to talk to you guys about is the Tower of the Gods. This is the 3rd dungeon in the game, and it's fairly straightforward and quick. I think a lot of people kind of just blow through it on their way to the Master Sword and Castle Hyrule, but I have a lot of childhood memories with this place. Early on, you're kind of just sailing around the main room doing little puzzles and getting these pillars of light to open gates to progress, but oh boy. Before we go on, I wanted to talk about something that I think 6-year-old me would describe as traumatic, but after I'm done explaining it, I think the word that most people are going to use is funny. So there's this puzzle in Tower of the Gods. It's not difficult, it's just a Zelda puzzle. But for some reason, to 6-year-old me, this was the single hardest thing that I had ever done in my entire life up to that point. It's so hard, in fact, that it walled me. It walled me so bad that I was stuck on it for days. It walled me so bad that I was just content with restarting my game and playing up to that point over and over and over again. And I said, you know what, yeah, this is it. This is the entire game. This is The Legend of Zelda Wind Waker. Just from this point up to that puzzle. I can't really describe this puzzle to you guys, so I'm just going to show it to you. This is me being vulnerable, so you're not allowed to laugh. I'll cry. Alright, here it is. The terrifying, unbeatable box puzzle. The way that this works is this room slowly fills and drains with water on a time interval, and you need to get a stick lit with fire across to the other side to light both of the torches to get a key. Of course, you can't swim with a lit stick, so what you need to do is, while the water is drained, you need to position the boxes in such a way that when the water is raised, you can use them as platforms to jump across with the stick to light the torches on the other side. Simple, right? Yeah, it is simple. In fact, it's even simpler than how I described it, because the solution is moving one single box slightly to the right, and then they're in the appropriate position for you to jump across. But for some reason, my child brain just couldn't figure this out. I was trying to push the boxes together and make a solid bridge that I could run across, and just kept getting frustrated that there weren't actually enough boxes to form a complete bridge. And at this point, I actually had a memory card, so I'd end up getting stuck here for a few days before just getting frustrated and then wiping my data and starting over from the beginning. That was until, like an angel sent from heaven, my friend who came over one day while I was stuck here was like, "Why don't you just jump across?" And it changed my life forever. You're watching Channel 12, WFRU TV, a Fruit Broadcasting Group production.
For a limited time, buy the Nintendo Gamecube for only $149.95 and receive Metroid Prime or one of 3 other great games free.
Can I get a price check?
In the land of Hyrule, the wind echoes a legend. A legend that tells of a boy who became a man. He traveled to the ends of the earth, challenging the forces of nature, testing the limits of his will, all to fulfill his destiny, which is, above all else, to save me.
The Legend of Zelda, The Wind Waker. Rated E for everyone.
We now return you to Atmosphere, only on Channel 12, WFRU TV. Everything beyond this point is what the younger version of me would consider the mature section of the game. You know, I talked about how I was never able to get past the box puzzle as a kid, and when my friend finally helped me beat it, I was able to experience the rest of the game for the first time. But I wasn't really used to it. You know, I had played that opening section dozens and dozens and dozens of times, just getting stuck at the box puzzle. But now, things were getting scarier. You know, you get the Master Sword, you see scarier enemies. I didn't really know how to feel about it, and things were changing. I had this childhood game that I loved a lot, and now it's starting to scare me a little bit. Before we get too scary though, I didn't really know where to put this section, so I'm just going to talk about it right here, and that's the desk at the Nintendo Gallery. Normally when you come here, the dude who makes the sculptures for you is in the way, but after you complete the gallery, he actually disappears and lets you see all of his cool little knickknacks behind the counter. Most of the cool notable things are on his shelves on the back of the wall. I really like the little jars of paint that he uses to paint the sculptures and these scale models of the submarine and the salvage boat. I kind of want them in real life, and I wish that I could actually find somebody to make me a little scale model of the salvage boat to put on my shelves. But the coolest thing are the masks on his wall back here, and a lot of you will probably recognize these from Majora's Mask. He's got a Keaton mask, the Goron mask, behind the seagull is the bunny hood, and between the bunny hood and the Goron mask I think is supposed to be the All Night mask, but I'm not sure. And lastly, from this angle, we can see that he has a flyer hung up on his wall, either for Lon Lon Ranch or the Milk Bar from previous games. This would also kind of imply that he knows what a cow is, though, which is kind of weird because there are no cows in this game. Anyway, let's take a trip back to Outset Island so I can talk about something that, the more I think about, the weirder and scarier it gets to me. If we pull out our telescope and we look to the east, we can see the silhouette of this island that's maybe a mile away from where we are. Sailing over here, we find just a plain beach with a giant, ominous stone head sitting in front of these rocks. Now, of course, this is the Earth Temple, as we find out later in the game, but I can only imagine the stone head isn't to keep us out, but to keep the things in here in. You see, this place is horrifying. It's basically a giant graveyard. It's got flying skulls, coffins everywhere, ghosts, zombies. I mean, can you imagine how many corpses need to be in here to facilitate all of these things? And the worst part is all of these things, all of this horrible stuff, is just like a mile away from Outset Island. It's visible from every beach on the island. And the people living there just go about their day completely unaware that even before the horizon is just a mountain of corpses sitting underneath the ocean. But we're not even done yet, because turning around and looking west right behind us is another giant, horrifying stone head. And beneath this stone head is a place lovingly referred to as the Savage Labyrinth. 50 floors of horrifying monsters just waiting to break out and terrorize and maim the townsfolk. And this place too has corpses. But if you want to get away from all of that, we can visit the cabana. This is supposed to be one of the most relaxing areas in the game, and it certainly feels like that from the outside. You have these lovely orange flowers, which I believe are unique to this area, and this really nice pond with a waterfall feeding it. In the middle of the pond is this nice brick patio area with this umbrella that's shading you, a really comfortable chair and a soft towel, a fruity drink that's probably delicious. You can just sit here and relax and look out over the ocean. The inside of the cabana is a little snug, I'll admit. It's one room, but it's got this nice roaring fireplace that you can probably curl up beside and play Pokemon Mystery Dungeon on your Game Boy late at night, all warm and comfortable. There's also a bathtub in here, which is a little weird. I don't think there's another bathtub anywhere else in the game, so that's a little interesting. But underneath the fireplace that you were just cozying up beside playing Pokemon Mystery Dungeon is a horrible secret. Dropping down this hole, we get access to the cabana's basement, which is less of a basement and more of a creepy, disgusting, dank sewer, and also the only sewer in the entire game. You thought you were in paradise, but instead you're greeted with rats, ankle-deep water, tiny claustrophobic holes that the game expects you to crawl through, holes in the ground with seemingly no way out, and corpses. You see what I mean about this game being way scarier after Tower of the Gods? And this is just scratching the surface. I didn't even talk about half of what's in the end game. I didn't even show you guys or talk about the ghost ship. Why did they put so many corpses in this game? You know, as I've been sitting here in this dirt chamber next to the smelly corpse, it's all become clear to me. I see now why Kid Me kept deleting my save and starting over at the beginning. I like Outset Island. I like being at Grandma's house. I regret finishing the box puzzle. In fact, I'm gonna leave this dirt chamber, I'm gonna leave this stinky corpse behind, and I'm gonna restart my game, and I'm gonna go hang out with Grandma some more. If you're still here, thank you so much for watching this video all the way to the end, and thank you for letting me just talk about my own nostalgic tendencies and ramble on about things that probably only I care about. But these are the types of things that I love about video games, these small little details that developers put into their worlds that make them feel more alive and more lived in, and it makes me feel like I could live there too. I've always sort of had this connection to video games, and I feel like that's probably why I made Atmosphere as a concept in general, is to have an outlet to talk about these sort of things. So sincerely, thank you for that. If you guys are into the Atmosphere thing, please stick around. I've got plenty more games that I can talk about that have given me similar experiences. I don't think I'm gonna make another Atmosphere Wind Waker video. There's so many more moments in this game that I didn't cover, but I could talk for hours and hours and hours about it, and no one's gonna watch that. My next video though is going to be much shorter than this one, and it definitely has a more defined topic than Atmosphere, so I hope you all look forward to that. I'm definitely looking forward to making it. I hope to see you all there, so until next time, I will see you later.